All right. Hey, everyone. I'm Uriah Kaiser, publisher of PotomacLocal.com, Potomac Local News. We appreciate you coming on this afternoon, this edition of Potomac Local Live here on Facebook and YouTube. I don't need to tell you that it is hot outside today, and that's why Jeremy Geiger, he is joining us. Jeremy Geiger from the National Weather Service office in Baltimore, Washington, the one that serves our region here in Northern Virginia. Jeremy is the chief hydrologist there. And today, Jeremy, I appreciate you coming on. I think I want to get right to it when we're talking about the weather because the temps, the mercury is outside, it's over 100 degrees. At last check, when I looked outside, it's a beautiful day. I just got back. I had to go out run some errands, but it's hot and it's hot for Virginia in summer, and that's saying something. So, uh, and it's been hot for the past 2 weeks. We got a little reprieve last week because we had some rain come through, and we'll get to the drought part of the conversation. Not to mention, not only is it hot, but we're also in a drought, and so that rain was nice to see. We'll see if it made a dent in the drought that we're in. But Jeremy, if you could talk about why is it so abnormally hot? What's causing all this?
Well, as we know, weather comes in cycles. So you don't have the same weather every day, fall, winter, spring, summer, it changes from day to day, week to week. And so this summer, it started kind of like in that mid to late June going, and then going into July, we had that pattern where it's a warmer pattern. We're getting later in the summer, so it's getting your peak time of year where it's the hottest time of year, combined with that pattern where we're funneling warmth and heat from the south up into our area. And sometimes it's depending on how you look at heat. Sometimes, as we talk about on the West Coast, it's a dry heat. Well, versus a lot of times on the East Coast, it's one of those heats that's it's made worse by that, enhanced moisture. It makes it more humid. As we know, the Mid Atlantic can be very humid. So you can when it's 95 out, it can really feel like it's maybe 100 or 105. And when you have that combination where it's going to be like 98, 99 today, we potentially could hit 100, 101, and you have that moisture like dew points up in the 70s. So 101 really can feel like 110, 111. So it really magnifies those impacts of just straight temperature. Feels like more of a 101 feels more like 110. So we just have this pattern where you're favorably bringing it's dry out, clear skies. You're bringing that warmer air from the south up into our area, and then also when we get that right pattern, we also increase the moisture, so it just makes it more humid. So it makes it even feel warmer, so it's more impactful when you have 100 degrees with dew points maybe in the 70s. It feels warmer. It's more impactful.
So I read that there is a Bermuda high over our area. Is that, and what is a Bermuda high? One might associate it with the island out there in the Atlantic Ocean, but what is a Bermuda high? And typically, what do we see? Is this indicative of every time we see a Bermuda high? I know I've read that in the past when we've done the weather for Potomac Local. So what are we talking about when we say that?
So high pressure is an area of, different level. We always associate low pressure with weather and storms, fronts. A lot of people know fronts from TV. A lot of time that's associated with lower pressure. It's hard to really situate with lower pressure, but high pressure is just an area of high pressure, and it's actually a constant area. It's over Atlantic Ocean. It's always there. And during the summer, it will sometimes shift west, east, from where it's located. It's typically in line with that the island of Bermuda. That's why they call it the Bermuda High. So when it shifts a little bit further west, that allows, like on the typically high pressure, has air circulating it around it in a clockwise motion, while low pressure is more counterclockwise. So basically, when it shifts west, that west side where the air is coming from the south gets funneled right up into our area. Now, if we happen to be on the east side, it might be more air coming from the Northeast or Canada. So that basically the idea is as it moves west, you get more of that southerly flow being pulled up, as well as less clouds.
You told me before we got on here that you've been with the National Weather Service for about 6 years. Is these types of temperatures, it being this hot for so long here in the mid-Atlantic, Is this abnormal, or is this just par for the course? Is this something that is pretty common and we just haven't seen it in a while, and we're just not we've forgotten how hot it can get here in Virginia?
So it doesn't happen every year. So in that sense, typically, 100 degrees isn't like it hasn't happened. It has happened in the past. I grew up in Mid-Atlantic, a little bit further north in PA, outside Philly, and I've seen 100-degree weather days growing up. So it does happen. Does it happen every year? No. We typically get up in the 90s, probably a couple times a year, if a couple times during the summer, maybe a little more. We do get up into the mid to upper 90s. I did actually have a coworker. He looked up the stats for so far in terms of temperatures. How many 90-degree days, 95 and 100. Just give you an idea. So far, as of yesterday, we've had about 26 90-plus degree days. Of those 26, 14 have been above 95. And then of those, 2 of them have been over 100. And this is at DCA.
Yeah. And that's where we keep the records there at Washington
DCA,
National.
Dulles, as well as Baltimore BWR, the 3 official climate records in the area. Just to get an idea, the area with the most 90-plus degree days was roughly 2010. Okay. So in that year, we had 400-degree plus days. And we also had 27 95-plus degree days. And out of the past 30 years, from 1991 to 2020, because we look at 30-year records, 30, 30, 30 norm averages, there have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Out of those 30 years, we've had 12 of those years that have had 100-plus degree days. So in the past 30 years, about over 30% of the years have had at least 100-degree day.
And pardon me, but how many 100-degree days have we seen so far in 2024?
So far, not including today, the next 2 days, we've seen 2 100-plus degree days so far at DCA. That reached hit 100 or higher.
So we're not approaching sort of any records in terms of the number string of days that we've seen, but we're working on it. We're
mid-July, so we still have the rest of July and August and potentially into September. Now you really don't get 100-degree days in September, so it's more the July, August. So we'll have to see how the rest of the summer works out. But we've got a fair amount of 100-degree days so far for the month of 2024, the year of 2024, and considering the majority of these 30% of these the years that have had 100, they've had like maybe 1. So we're looking potentially you could hit that the next 2 days as well, today and tomorrow. So that could put up to 4, which would be a higher subset of all the ones that we had in the past 30 years. Now we haven't looked back further, but the 30-year average that as of right now is from 1991 to 2020. That's why he looked at it. But we could look back further, how long the records at DCA goes. We could, in theory, see how many have and see if that 30% holds true.
I'm looking at these temperatures that your office put out this morning at about 5, just before 6 a.m. And obviously the 100 degrees in Washington D.C., 101 in Fredericksburg is the forecast high today. We're seeing a lot of that heat concentrated along the urban core, along I-95, right, where a lot of the pavement is. But you just said that we're about midsummer. We still have August to go. Is this in the forecast? Should we continue to expect to see these types of temperatures as the weeks go on? Is this just a normal thing? Is this summer 2024 for us this year?
I mean, it's summer 2024 so far. Like I said, it's just the pattern we're in right now. For example, we do cool down toward the end of the week, which we're all looking forward to. It's funny when you think mid-80s as being cool for us, but we've been so warm lately. But it's hard to say if we're going to have more 100-degree days. It's all going to depend on, do we have this pattern that comes back in where it's just favorable for these hot and humid conditions to move in here. So as of right now, we might be sitting at 4 after the next 2 days. Does that mean we're going to have more 100-degree days? It's possible, but it's hard to say going forward because we don't have forecast models that have higher confidence that go out past 100. I mean, past 7 days. So it's our more confidence level is usually out 7 days, maybe 10 for like bigger picture things.
So we'll look forward to that cool down later in the week then.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we'll do. I want to switch gears with you now and talk about this drought that we're in. It looks like it looks like the entire state of Virginia now. It looks to be in some sort of drought, and it looks to be more severe in our area, especially. We've just not seen a lot of rain, and I think, and this time of year, I think they say the corn by July 4th, it's supposed to be knee high. I think there's a rhyme in there somewhere. I'm forgetting what that rhyme is. But we are in the drought. What has obviously we've not seen the rain that we normally have seen. But how did we get here, and should we be concerned?
And it's funny you say this. You actually almost have to look back even further. If you think about the past couple of years, we've been in the same situation the past couple of years, right around the same time of year. Especially the Shenandoah Valley has been particularly hit. It's like we've been dry going back. Last spring of 2023 to even 2022, we've had these very dry periods, and we haven't had a really heavy rain event. Multiple rain events to really dig us out of the previous drought. It might be short-lived improvements, but I mean, if you look at the flows and stuff on the Shenandoah, they've only been certain flows even after we got in rivers. So there's an underlying heavier drought that's been around probably for a couple of years, but it's just those areas in Shenandoah and even starting to expand toward the Potomac River. It's just the rain has been focused in certain areas now, further southeast or south, or to the north over parts of PA or the Eastern Shore have gotten a lot more of the rain versus this area. And it is concern. I've heard reports from some of the counties that they've instituted their own their water restrictions. I know the Potomac Basin, it's the Interstate Commission on the Potomac Basin who really look at the water resources of Potomac. They're monitoring it right now because it's getting below a certain threshold. So if it gets any more lower flows, those water intakes might have to maybe drop down to a lower pipe to pull it in. And I've heard stories if you start to pull lower in the water, you get a lot more silt coming in. So there's a lot more issues. So you have to watch in terms of waters, and then also the reservoirs upstream have to start to release more water to bring up those flows to help out. And that's why we have a lot of dams upstream, Savage Dam, Jennings Randolph, their reservoir dams as like a backup for if we have drought, and they might have to start releasing water potentially to recharge the Potomac at parts.
And so you monitor the Potomac and the Rappahannock, or the rivers in our area, into Maryland and the Patuxent. Tell me how that process works.
Yeah, so it's a combination of things. We have stream and river gauges throughout the network. Usually they're a combination of either USGS or some state or county level gauges. We keep an eye on those, especially the gauges that actually have flow. So the movement of the water versus the height of the water. A lot of the hydrologists and the engineers who work with floodplains, they focus on the flow versus what's the height of the water. So understanding if the water is flowing at higher levels, that usually generally translates to higher water levels, which means better water resources. That combined with looking at well levels and different levels to look at what groundwater tables that can give us an idea of like how hard our water resources are being hit. So across the board, the aquifers, the groundwater is low. That also affects the rivers, so you don't have as much flow. And I've heard some reports that the Shenandoah National Park actually had to stop fishing because the stream and river levels are so low. The fish, they can't have fishing. And this happened last year as well. So it's that Shenandoah River Valley has been heavily impacted, I think, the most out of the past couple of years.
So, and we've seen voluntary water restrictions go into effect in Fauquier County and the town of Warrenton. As I look here at the U.S. Drought Monitor map, they are in a severe drought, according to this map. You mentioned that the effect on the rivers is the obviously the water level is lower, but we could start there. Our rivers are also a recreational point, and we are in the middle of summer. We could potentially could we start seeing some restrictions going in on the rivers that we frequent in our area when it comes to, as you said, fishing or many some other activities to ensure the health and safety of our rivers.
Yeah, and then on top of, people don't realize, on top of water resource and recreations and other type of uses of water, this affects agriculture. It also affects trees. The grasses and the trees dry out. That surprisingly leads to an increased threat, say maybe fire weather, which is typically more of a fall issue, or even spring when it's windier. But if it's so dry, there's more potential. Maybe certain things get dry enough that someone sparks a fire potentially. So that's something, an outside thing that people don't really realize. If it's too dry and trees can't have those full green ups, it could potentially have a fire threat. Now, luckily, we haven't had big wind events. You normally don't summer, which can spread fires, but that's something we have to consider when it gets really dry. That's what's been happening the past couple of years in Canada. It's been so dry up there. They've had a lot of fires, which then, of course, we have the smoke issues from that, but that's a different story. It could be
Yeah, that was
similar to happens here.
that was a time having
Yeah.
the first time, and I've lived in Virginia all of my life, and the
Hmm.
first time I've ever been affected by a Canadian wildfire. That was pretty amazing. When you look at this map and seeing the condition the entire state of Virginia is in, what's it going to take to pull us out of this drought?
So I did an interview, I think it was last year, something about drought conditions. I looked back like the previous times we've had. I think I looked back all the maps. The last time we had D2 drought, and I looked and see what broke the drought. And I think 80% of the time, most major droughts are broken by a tropical storm. One or two tropical storms come in. They're known for producing anywhere between 15 to 20 inches of rain. That's a good boost to the area, and that a lot of times can overcome some of these orographic, mountain block. Because a lot of times, if you have rain, air coming from the southeast, it doesn't get over the mountains. So that's why a lot of times the Shenandoah will get kind of, we call rain shadow. They miss out on the heavier rain. Tropical events allow you to really get a nice widespread rain event. During the summer, a lot of times you get thunderstorms, and they're so localized. You have 2 inches over Dulles, but 5 miles east, it's been maybe a quarter of an inch of rain. So that doesn't really help your groundwater. You need a widespread rain event where it's just, say, hypothetically, 5 inches across the board over an extended period of time. I'd rather have 5 inches at once, because then it's flash flooding, and that makes me even busier. Don't get me wrong, I'm a hydrologist. I do like flooding, but I'd rather not it happen because of safety issues. We do need the rain. We need it to happen over an extended period of time versus over a severe thunderstorm popping up and dropping 5 inches in one area.
Now, to someone listening to this, they're probably saying, well, listen, it just rained, right? It just rained on Friday, and we had some residual rain on Saturday. I think it rained Thursday night. And so they're probably saying, well, what, isn't that enough? Didn't we just get some needed rain? So how did any of that rain over the weekend help us?
So one thing you have to consider here is two things. Where did it fall? If you look at it, the heaviest rain happened in southern Maryland. The southern tip of southern Maryland saw between 4 and 6 inches. And hey, the Chesapeake Bay saw almost 15 inches of rain, but it's the bay, it's already wet. Let's just dump some more water into the bay. That doesn't really help us here. So if you look at the areas heavily affected by drought right now, a lot of it was focused eastward or was very localized. The second factor is we had that heavy rain. What happened right after it rained? It got hot again. So, we had all this rain and it was short lived, and we have another extended period of 3 to 5 days of hot weather. So all that ground, it didn't have time to set in. It's now just drying out again. We haven't had these multiple days in a row or every couple of days of rain to really moisten the aquifers, the underground wells that we use for water. So it's like we get this rain and then it gets hot, and that's the issue.
Yeah. Is there something that we can do? Obviously, Fauquier County, Warrenton, they're doing voluntary restrictions? Is there something that the drought conscious person should be thinking about when it comes to how we go about our daily lives to help solve this, help make it less worse, I should say?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to what you should do because it's not my purview. I just give input about like conditions for drought. That's usually a state level practice. They make the decisions if we need to you need to take restrictions. Typically, and I believe the state of Virginia does put out little advisories. I think it's through the DCR. I believe Virginia DCR does a lot of the drought. Like they'll put out warnings and watches, which I think there's a warning probably for the whole Shenandoah area probably this time. But a lot of times they'll inform people what's necessary to be done. A lot of times just restrict your watering of grass. I mean, grass is minimal. If it's brown, it'll recover eventually when it rains. It's like that's something we can stop doing is water grass. We can see the agriculture is being affected. So like if they need the rain more than we do. So it's just small things we can do, not watering the grass and just see what your local and state officials recommend what you do. That's what I recommend is look at their websites. Like I said, the county of Fauquier and Warrenton are taking actions. I'm sure your county, there's county agencies or even state agencies that you probably can reach out to and see what you should do.
You mentioned the fire risk, which is always big. I mean, we turn on TV and we see the fires out west in California and the western states. And I think at one point last year, I think we had a fire here in Virginia out Page County. I think it was out Luray, if memory serves. So it can happen here. It does happen here. But at what point do we start thinking about another big thing that happens every year here in Virginia, and that's the fall foliage? A lot of people come to Skyline Drive and they tour Virginia to come and see, call them leaf peepers. They'll come out and check us out. At what point do we start to talk about that forecast? Because if it's so dry, how does that affect the color that we see in the fall?
I actually don't know how the lack of rain goes into the tree colors. I mean, I've heard stories of some leaves are starting to fall already because they're so dry. One of my coworkers told me that. It might be something I actually research now because I'm kind of interested to see like how drought plays into fall color changes. I haven't really dealt with that too much, but it might be something I now research to look at because I do like driving out to, up to either the PA or out to the Shenandoah Valley if I can hit it at the right time. If I'm off to take a look at and see like, is there see some changing colors? It's something I used to love growing up, driving up to the mountains to see the colors.
Perfect. I tell you, Virginia is great for it. Pennsylvania, as you well know, West Virginia, I've been there. Perfect time for it. So let's hope that just because it's dry doesn't mean we'll have a brown fall when we get there. For now, let's enjoy the rest of summer. Jeremy, this has been great and insightful. Thank you so much for coming on and educating us about the conditions that we're in now. And for everyone else watching and listening, do a rain dance when we need it and enjoy the cool down, right?
Exactly. It looks like it'd be cool I was looking at through this weekend, potentially Thursday through this weekend. And we do, unfortunately, get the 90s coming back next week, it looks like. So, but hopefully it's a shorter period versus, a couple weeks of hot weather, I'm hoping, because I want to get out and play tennis and go for a walk. So,
absolutely. Good stuff. Thanks, everyone, for joining us on this edition of Potomac Local Live. We'll have a recap for you on our website at PotomacLocalNews.com. If you're not a member, please do consider becoming a member and supporting our work here at Potomac Local News. We do rely on you. And if you don't get our email newsletter, please sign up. It's free. It's at PotomacLocalNews.com and click email newsletter. Thank you all so much for joining us and have a great day.